Coming up on 5 Minute News. Former Minnesota cop charged with manslaughter. Republican states lagging in vaccinations. And Russia and Ukraine hold military drills. It's Thursday, April 15. I'm Anthony Davis. A prosecutor said on Wednesday that he charged a white former suburban Minneapolis police officer with second-degree manslaughter for killing 20-year-old black motorist Dante Wright in a shooting that ignited days of unrest and clashes between protesters and police. The charge against former Brooklyn Center police officer Kim Potter was filed Wednesday, 3 days after Wright was killed during a traffic stop and as the nearby murder trial progresses for the ex-officer charged with killing George Floyd last May, Washington County Attorney Pete Orput said. The former Brooklyn Center police chief has said that Potter, a 26-year-old veteran and training officer, intended to use her taser on Wright, but fired her handgun instead. However, protesters and Wright's family members say there's no excuse for the shooting and that it shows how the justice system is tilted against blacks, noting Wright was stopped for expired car registration and ended up dead. Intent isn't a necessary component of second-degree manslaughter in Minnesota. The charge, which carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison, can be applied in circumstances where a person is suspected of causing a death by culpable negligence that creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances to cause the death of a person. Potter and Police Chief Tim Gannon both resigned on Tuesday. Concrete barriers and tall metal fencing had been set up around Potter's home in Champlin, north of Brooklyn Center, with police cars guarding the driveway. After George Floyd's death last year, protesters demonstrated several times at the home of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis officer, now on trial for Floyd's death. With coronavirus shots now in the arms of nearly half of all American adults, the parts of the US that are excelling and those that are struggling with vaccinations are starting to look like the nation's political map, deeply divided between red and blue states. Out in front is New Hampshire, where 65% of the population aged 18 and older has received at least one dose of the vaccine, according to the CDC. Following close behind are New Mexico, Connecticut, Maine and Massachusetts at 55% or greater. All have a history of voting Democratic and supported President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Meanwhile, at the bottom are 5 states where fewer than 40% have rolled up their sleeves for a shot. 4 of them, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana and Tennessee, lean Republican and voted for Donald Trump last fall. The 5th is Georgia, which has a Republican governor and supported GOP presidential candidates for nearly 3 decades before narrowly backing Biden. The emerging pattern, Americans in blue states that lean Democratic appear to be getting vaccinated at more robust rates, while those in red Republican states seem to be more hesitant. A poll by the Associated Press and Nork Center for Public Affairs Research in late March found that 36% of Republicans said they will probably or definitely not get vaccinated, compared with 12% of Democrats. In most U.S. states, vaccine shipments are based on population, as demand for the shot still exceeds supply. It's hard to know how many people are resisting until everyone wanting the shots gets them, but if states soon start seeing significant numbers of unfilled appointments, consequences could be serious. Russia and Ukraine held simultaneous military drills on Wednesday as NATO foreign and defense ministers began emergency discussions on amassing of Russian troops near the Ukrainian border. Washington and NATO have been alarmed by the large buildup of Russian troops near Ukraine and in Crimea, the peninsula that Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014, and 2 US warships are due to arrive in the Black Sea this week. Russia, which said the US naval move was an unfriendly provocation and warned Washington to stay far away from Crimea and its Black Sea coast, says the build-up is a 3-week snap military drill to test combat readiness in response to what it calls threatening behavior from NATO. It has said the exercise is due to wrap up within 2 weeks. Ahead of the arrival of the US warships, the Russian Navy on Wednesday began a drill in the Black Sea that rehearsed firing at surface and air targets. The drill came a day after NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called on Moscow to end its troop build-up. Fighting has increased in recent weeks in eastern Ukraine, where government forces have battled Russian-backed separatists in a 7-year conflict that Kiev says has killed 14,000 people. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.